correct, Nhlanhla. And what we've seen is essentially the Vusi Cat Matlala admitting to one particular relationship that he has had, and that is with the head of EMPD in Ekurhuleni, and that would be Julius Mkhwanazi. He admitted before Parliament's ad hoc committee that essentially they are friends, and however disputed allegations that he has other relationships with other central figures. You'll remember that Julius Mkhwanazi is alleged to have had a relationship with Vusi Cat Matlala, but not alleged to have had that relationship extending further to essentially having a tit-for-tat relationship, because it was Vusi Cat Matlala that donated 4 vehicles to the EMPD. And then we saw that exchange where there was that blue light fitted on his vehicles, allowing him to run amok essentially in Gauteng. So that is what has come out of the ad hoc committee. But there was also questions around his other relationships with other senior officials within the SAPS. Now you'll remember that he said that he does not have a relationship with the now suspended Deputy Police Commissioner for Crime Detection, Shadrack Sibiya. He said that he had an engagement with the Deputy National Police Commissioner. But what I found interesting, Nhlanhla, is that when Shadrack Sibiya appeared before Parliament's ad hoc committee, he admitted to having had a meeting with Vusi Cat Matlala. However, he said that that meeting was in relation to the 360 million rand tender that was awarded to Vusi Cat Matlala. Now, when questions were asked about that particular meeting, he said Vusi Cat Matlala approached him with his lawyer, but said that it was because he had a grievance in relation to this tender. Now, Vusi Cat Matlala appeared before Parliament's ad hoc committee. He says that engagement was not in relation to the awarding of that tender, but rather it was about the occupation of the hospital in which he was had the lease for that public that he received from Public Works that would allow him to essentially occupy that particular hospital and render the services after he was awarded that 360 million rand tender. However, this is not something that was clarified by Sibiya when he appeared before Parliament's ad hoc committee. And so that is the clarity now that has been provided by Vusi Cat Matlala, saying that it was not in relation to that particular grievance of the awarding of the tender, and rather that particular a lease that was given to him by the Department of Public Works. So it's that particular relationship that MPs were really grappling with in the main. Not only that, there was also questions about how many times the two parties have met and what the nature of those engagements were. Now, when Sibiya appeared before Parliament's ad hoc committee, he said that they only had one meeting. However, Matlala says there were 3 meetings. Also, what was interesting for the MPs, particularly the ANC's chief whip, Ntumiseni Ntuli, is essentially why Vusi Cat Matlala would approach Sibiya at a time when the National Police Commissioner was not in office, and therefore then Sibiya would be acting as National Commissioner. So he highlights a series of what he says are coincidences in which he believes that Sibiya, as well as Vusi Cat Matlala, shared a deeper bond than what they have shared with South Africans. Let's take a listen.
I didn't have a problem with a tender. It was a lease agreement for the hospital. It was not a tender. When I went to meet with General Sibiya, so it had nothing to do with the tender at that time. So, and then he was the head of the detectives. So I don't think it could be a coincidence, because you'll only find one head of detectives. So it was him. So whether he was acting as a national commissioner by then, it didn't change that he was still a head of the detectives. And my wife, when I said I went to fetch her, it was very late. So my protectors had already knocked off. To call them to come back, I think for me it will waste time. So that's why I just decided to take an Uber to go fetch her. And Mr. Netengwe, I wouldn't even mention him in my affidavit if I had something to do with me, if I'm the one who initiated to hire his niece. So I mentioned it because of also, it came to me as an instruction more than a request to hire his niece.
Now, Nhlanhla, that is another coincidence that was highlighted by Ntuli, in which Vusi Cat Matlala said that his wife had attended a party that he was not invited to. And when that happened, his wife said she had had too much to drink and requested that she be fetched. Vusi Cat Matlala then goes to that location only to discover that that party was the party of Sibiya's child. And so that is another coincidence that has been highlighted by Ntuli before Parliament's inquisitorial body. There were also questions around the meeting that he said he had with the top cop in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, in which he said that Mkhwanazi actually offered to assist him after a meeting was facilitated by Begicele, in which Mkhwanazi offered to assist him in relation to that 360 million rand tender, essentially because he said that that would be blocked by the head of HR in the SAPS, and that's Lieutenant General Nkua. And so that is what Vusi Cat Matlala says his inability to assist Mkhwanazi in that regard, and the charges that were laid with IPID after an alleged assault of an Ishmael Nangi who shares the same complex with him, is when he says he then faced those charges of attempted murder of his former girlfriend, Tebogo Tobejane. But not only that, also that particular cessation of the relationship, or the cessation of assistance, financial assistance to former police minister Begicele, is what led to them allegedly filing those charges for attempted murder against Vusi Cat Matlala. However, the MK Party's Sibonelo Nomvalo said essentially that this may have been part of an investigation that Vusi Cat Matlala was not aware of, and that there are different ways essentially to skin a cat, and that essentially because what Mkhwanazi had promised that he would do for Cat Matlala did not take place, and therefore it may have been an investigation that Matlala was not aware of. There were also questions around Jerry Bushokha. Now, Jerry Bushokha is said to be a close friend to Cat Matlala. However, he went missing in November 2024 and to date is still missing. Now, there are questions around his safety and whether he is still alive. Matlala says that he does not believe that he is still alive because he may not be of assistance and would instead be draining the resources, the financial resources of his captors. Now, he was given an opportunity by the EFF's Julius Malema to really speak to this issue, because he's admitted before Parliament's ad hoc committee that he was involved in the dealing of drugs. That's Jerry Bushokha was involved in the dealing of drugs, something that he says he was aware of for a period of 2 years. He also says that he borrowed Bushokha an amount of 1 million rand for his business on his farm, but said that to date, that amount had reduced to about 100,000 rand, just over 100,000 rand. So he was given that opportunity, given the kind of speculation that he may be involved in that disappearance, where he was given that opportunity to really speak to the mother of Jerry Bushokha. Let's take a listen.
Jerry's mom is watching. Talk to her.
I will say, Mama, you know very well, me and your son, we are very, very, very close friends. We've done a lot of things together, traveled together, me and his wife and my wife, and there was nothing that I will do to harm your son. Actually, your son was like a young brother to me. So there are people who are getting between us, trying to convince you that I took your son so that you might think of me as this boogeyman that people paint me to be. But from the bottom of my heart, I've never and I will never, ever do anything to harm your son or your family.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry.
Now, what we saw there in Ntantla is really parliamentarians trying to demonstrate the human effect of corruption or alleged corruption. Now, this brings to an end the sittings of the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee for the year of 2025. It has been granted an extension in 2026 where it will resume in January. It's over to you, Ntantla.